Did you know that the famous Playboy empire of the 1960s was started with $600? Interesting realization, right? Before his death in 2017, Hugh Hefner had become a widely known and celebrated media mogul thanks to the Playboy project. Although the magazine was facing a decline and being stifled by its various competitors, people still admit that the introduction of that magazine was the kickstart of a major revolution in America's entertainment industry. Almost every competitor that exists now simply picked up on the Playboy concept and made a slight improvement on it, a reality that would have otherwise been unheard of without the arrival of Playboy. What could have inspired this killer move by Hugh Hefner? Have you ever wondered? Well, we have, and we bring you all the spicy information on how Hugh Hefner built his $1 million empire. Stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe. Early life. Let's start with a little story of the young Hugh Hefner. Hugh Hefner was born on April 9, 1926 in the city of Chicago. His parents were Glenn Lucius and Grace Caroline Hefner of German and Swedish ancestries, respectively. They were a very conservative couple, which causes many to wonder how Hugh Hefner was able to spiral into such a huge media mogul in the home of such parents. These were people that would restrain him from smoking, drinking, clubbing, or even going to see a movie on Sundays. And this, of course, showed in his early life as a reserved young bachelor before the birth of Playboy, of course. His mother had always wanted him to become a missionary, but adventurous Hugh Hefner went far from that reality. As a means of escaping his humdrum life, Hefner frequently passed time drawing comics and writing. This enabled him to build up so much skill in these areas with his frequent practice, and after graduating from college with a psychology major, he landed an advertising job at Esquire magazine, working as a cartoonist. In the course of his service there, he got to discover the reasons behind the success of the magazine, and with some skill set up his sleeves from working in a magazine company, he was able to build his own magazine after resigning from the company due to their refusal to give him a pay raise. This was where the story of the Playboy empire began. The rise of Playboy. The Playboy empire was birthed out of Hefner's entire life savings of $600 at the time, as well as a few loans from other sources. One surprising source of his loans was his conservative mother, who agreed to give him a $1,000 loan even with his father's strict antagonism. This loan soon made the affectionate mother a millionaire as Playboy scaled beyond all expectations. According to Hugh Hefner in an interview with E! News, although his mother did not exactly buy the idea, she agreed to write him that check because she believed in her son. Needless to say, her faith worked for her, as the Playboy magazine's first issue in December 1953 recorded over 50,000 sales, springing to an annual profit margin of $4 million by 1958. By this time, the reserved young Hefner had become a nationwide star. Okay, pause for a bit there. What could have caused Hefner's Playboy magazine to amass such fame? Well, let's talk about it. The content of the Playboy magazine's first issue and what made it really stand out at such a time. To create the Playboy magazine, Hefner borrowed and built on the strategy used by Esquire to attract many college students to it. Esquire had adopted a strategy of giving the American youth a picture of what an educated youth should look like. The sophistication, wild interests, and of course, attachment to beautiful ladies. Hugh Hefner took this strategy up a notch by inculcating nude pictures in the Playboy magazine. He purchased a few almost forgotten early career nude shots of Marilyn Monroe. According to sources, these shots had been taken in desperation at the front lines of Marilyn's career and had earned her $50. Now, they sold for $200. These were the nude photos that the first issue of the Playboy magazine featured, alongside some interesting cartoons and jokes that he created. And although there was a lot of nudity going around then, this was the cleanest quality of such magazines that was available at the time. And so it did attract a lot of eyes. And not long after, in 1971, nearly a quarter of all American college men were buying or subscribing every month, and the magazine had skyrocketed to sales of over 7 million. The first proposed name for Hugh Hefner's project was Stag Party. However, the name brought some controversy and awarded him some copyright issues, so he went with Playboy, which actually is quite an interesting name, don't you think? With so much uncertainty in his heart, Hugh Hefner released the first issue of the Playboy magazine, not including a publish date, for fear that there would be no sales, but he was pleasantly surprised when the results came in. Although the beginnings of the project were rough, Hefner persisted and did all he could to make the project a success. He had to sell $8,000 worth of stock to investors to gather funds for the project, in addition to his $600 and the $1,000 loan from his mother. He also employed his dad, who was into accounting, as his personal accountant, and he surprisingly obliged. This way, he got his both conservative parents involved in the publication of a rather unconservative magazine, and although they were heavily involved, they seemed to uphold their religious standards as none of them read a single issue of the Playboy magazine. The highlight of the first issue of the Playboy magazine was the Sweetheart of the Month concept, which has gradually evolved over the years into what we now know as the Playmate. This was where the nude pictures of star Marilyn Monroe came into swift action. In addition to that, there was also a couple other interesting content. The magazine featured stories and brilliant articles from some of the most famous content creators and critics of the time, including Stephen King, who submitted a couple of short stories for the magazine, as well as Ray Bradbury, Ernest Hemingway, and a host of others whose publications made the Playboy magazine an extremely high-quality publication. Hugh Hefner made some cool income off the advertisements on the magazine, which he tailored to depict the lifestyle of his readers. These adverts earned him enough money to rent a proper office in downtown Chicago by the fourth issue. Hefner's first divorce in 1959 was a dramatic situation that produced dramatic results for the newly birthed star. He struggled to put a line between his personal life and his career and was soon carried away, taking on the persona of the Playboy as depicted by his magazine, the ideal bachelor, sophisticated and successful and surrounded by the most adorable ladies. He became the face of Playboy, and that continued for the rest of his life. How Hefner scaled Playboy. By 1960, Playboy magazine reported over 1 million sales and became recognized as the most successful magazine in the United States. This generated over $2.3 million of revenue, part of which Hugh Hefner invested in furthering his empire. He opened a Playboy club in Chicago where people could have the time of their lives, getting served food and drinks by the iconic Playboy Bunnies. This venture was super successful and recorded a whopping 132,000 visitors in just the last 3 months of 1961. Seeing its advancement, Hugh Hefner soon opened many other Playboy clubs across the country. He also began to invest in other real estate properties, including hotels and casinos. His fame continued to spread across the country, and by the end of the 1960s, Playboy had recorded $127 million worth of sales. The magazine content was also improving in quality, featuring various in-depth interviews with numerous high-profile celebrities of the time, including the Beatles, Malcolm X, and Miles Davis. America experienced the full force of the sexual revolution in the 1970s, and Playboy was a huge part of that movement. To further expand the radar of his now most wanted bachelor personality, Hugh Hefner purchased the Playboy Mansion for $1.1 million in 1971. The mansion was located near Beverly Hills, the fancy spot for the elites in Los Angeles, California, and Hefner frequently hosted lavish parties there. This further boosted his reputation, and in just 1 year, Playboy reported a total circulation of 7.2 million, its highest rate since inception. It also became a publicly traded company. The fall of the Playboy empire. One would have thought that this would be the beginning of a mystical story of dreams coming true for the company, but it was far from that. The company soon began to experience a decline in profits, even amidst increasing revenues. Hefner's real estate investments and partnerships with Columbia Pictures to make movies and TV shows was draining the company's treasury and causing further strain on the company's pocket. The situation got more terrible, and by the 1980s, the Playboy empire had experienced a massive decline, having lost $69 million within a 2-year period. The number of Playboy clubs dropped drastically, and other competitors arose to challenge the Playboy magazine. A quick intervention was made in 1982 when Hugh Hefner's daughter Christy was appointed president of Playboy and was given the task of bringing the sinking ship back afloat, which she strived to do with all of her heart. She sold off Playboy's casinos and began to put great effort in bringing the magazine in line with the times. One of her strategies was giving the magazine a totally new direction, diversifying its content and giving space to explore social issues. Topics like freedom of speech, gay rights, the fight against AIDS. They became more prominent within the Playboy magazine. She was, however, careful not to completely erase its nude spice, while also making space for activists and politics to find expression. This, however, attracted the attention of the government, which led to the Playboy magazine being labeled as pornographic in 1986, a move that caused a drastic fall in sales. Christie, however, took advantage of the international audience to keep things moving. The Playboy mansion was sold off in 2016, just a year before the death of Hugh Hefner, for $100 million, which was half of the asking price at the time of purchase. The company has also seen a lot of decline over the years, especially with remarkable competition from 21st century internet pornography.